Hello, I'm Alexandra Sleator, Career Accelerator, and in this second video on feedback, I propose to share with you what I see as the top 3 mistakes that managers make when giving feedback. Sadly, there are a bit more than 3, but I thought I would concentrate on the following. The first one is sugarcoating negative feedback. Indeed, I shared with you in the previous video that it is important to always start a conversation, even if it's going to consist mostly of negative feedback, with some positive comments. And that's because even the poorest performer has a talent. And so it is important to celebrate some of the effort, at least, that somebody has put into their work. And it is a really, really rare case when there is nothing good to say about somebody. This is also to show that as the feedback provider, you are a balanced individual, you have a balanced opinion. Because if all you give is one-sided feedback, it could appear partial and risk diluting your credibility. The problem though with a positive feedback can be in 2 ways. The first is that sometimes we are very irritated as human beings by the poor performance of a colleague who is simply not pulling their weight, and it's unfair on the rest of the team. So we find it difficult to connect to any positive aspects of their performance. And so because we want to play by the rules and we want to give positive feedback to start the conversation, we effectively pay lip service and we are disingenuous. And I caution you here, because my experience is that feedback recipients will spot that this is in fact dishonest. And what this does is really create a bad atmosphere in which the feedback conversation starts. And it risks ruining all the rest of the conversation, because the person could think that you're really out to get them. So find it in your heart and in your mind something genuinely positive that you believe absolutely about the person, and if you speak from a position of sincerity, you will connect with the feedback recipient, and they will know that you are balanced in the way you present your feedback, and you will have a chance to really discuss the more negative aspects of the performance in a constructive way. The second issue with sugarcoating negative feedback is for managers who are worried, that's very nice, about hurting the feedback recipients, their team members. And so what they end up doing is being a little bit washy, a bit vague, imprecise in their feedback in an attempt to be kind to the recipient. But that, of course, is very ineffective because, as I will tell you in a minute, vague feedback is unhelpful feedback. And what happens is that if the person doesn't understand what really was the quality of the performance, A, they have no chance to improve, and B, of course, they are disconnected from the reality of their effort, which means that, for example, they could be very surprised when their compensation is not what they expect. And so you have a misalignment there, which will only get worse and have negative repercussions. So it is important that you find the sincerity to articulate the negative feedback in all its honesty. And that leads me, in fact, to the second mistake that managers make when giving feedback, is that they stay too vague. We are all told that we have to be specific, and yet time and again I have observed that people are not good at explaining why they have come to the conclusions that they share with the recipient around the quality of their performance. They do not detail the instances, the what happened, the why was it of that quality, what was the consequences. They do not explain that in enough detail. They go too fast, possibly because they're a bit nervous about giving negative feedback. And the consequence, of course, is a lack of impact, a dilution of the message, the impossibility for the recipient to really understand what happens, and in fact a breach of trust and rapport, which is not going to be helpful if you really want the recipient to take action, to be encouraged to look at the performance and improve it. And so indeed what is also very important about feedback is to imagine yourself that you're going to be in a court of law, and so you have to give clear and tangible evidence and pretend that you have 12 jurors sitting there who know nothing of the case, and they need to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that your feedback is the accurate one. So you need to be able to demonstrate why you say what you say. And in doing so, be careful to always rate the task, never the person. For example, you can call a report inadequate, but never call a person that. Apart from the fact that it's offensive, it's also again going to weaken the relationship, and if the ultimate aim that you have is one which is constructive, then having even inadvertently offended the person is not gonna do you much service. A third element I want to share with you around giving specific feedback is the use of I statements. It is very important that you own your feedback. Don't hide behind things like people say, or use the passive voice, one could think. Again, it dilutes the message. Of course, not all the feedback that you will relay to someone will come from your own observations. And so clearly it is perfectly acceptable, and in fact it's current practice, to relay feedback that you obtain from third parties. Those third parties will typically be kept anonymous. So it's not here a question of revealing who told you what. But for you to have done your job of due diligence when you are gathering the feedback, that you are able to explain convincingly to the recipient why you think this feedback is important for you to relay and why you have come to certain conclusions based on what you heard. It also opens up the occasion for a discussion between yourself and the feedback recipient, that they can say, well, from their perspective something else was happening. So it's also an invitation to the dialogue rather than you monologuing. So keep it clear, tangible evidence. Pretend that you have to convince jurors, and use I statements to show that you really own your feedback and that you stand behind your own words. And that way you will avoid the second mistake that managers too often make when giving feedback, which is being too vague. So if you haven't sugar-coated your negative feedback, and you have been clear and precise in delivering constructive feedback, you're ready to tackle the third mistake, which is that of giving solutions rather than support. When I was sharing with you last time these 8 steps to constructive feedback, I talked about the 7th steps, which is comfort. And that's the helpful step. That's where, after you've discussed all the feedback, you really to look forward. What are you going to do about it? And what I've often observed is that managers who look at underperformance and underperformers do not believe that these individuals are capable of coming up with their own solutions. So they feed them ready-made solutions about what to do about fixing their performance. And what's the issue with that? Well, first of all, somebody who's underperforming is not necessarily incompetent. There may be many reasons that need to be explored that can explain the underperformance. And so indeed the person, especially if you've given them a chance to really take responsibility for their underperformance, should be incentivized, encouraged to come up with their own remedies, the ones that will feel more natural to them, and the one that they will be more naturally able to commit to and to follow through with. Whereas if you spoon feed them solutions, you're imposing your view on them, and that may reduce their commitment. It's also a little bit belittling to be treated like a child who needs to be told what to do, rather than being consulted and engaged in the process of remediation. So you are going to stifle personal development, and you may miss out on the opportunity to really engage the person in tackling their performance from a position of commitment. And that is a very crucial step, because even if you've had a great conversation where the person has gotten on board with the negative feedback, if the follow-up steps are not well embedded, if you haven't been able to elicit the right kind of commitment, all this good work that you did by giving really constructive feedback will in fact be, not annulled, because there won't be any follow-through and the performance will not pick up as you wanted. So that comfort part, that help part is very important. So I would encourage you to give suggestions for the person to explore, even people that they can go to and discuss it, and make also very clear what role, if any, you're going to play directly in being part of the remediation. Again, the more this is structured with room for the person to take charge of their own remediation, the better and the more engaged they will be with taking action and picking up their performance. So that is what I wanted to share with you around, again, the top 3 mistakes that I see managers making: sugarcoating negative feedback, and you saw the image of the Oreo cookie where you're sugarcoating there. The too vague feedback, even though all of us know how crucial it is to give specific, tangible feedback. And missing out on the opportunity to really engage someone in remediation by giving them remedial solutions rather than letting them construct their own solutions. I hope this was helpful. I would love to hear what you thought of these top 3 mistakes. What do you think are managers' top 3 mistakes in giving feedback? Let's have a dialogue about that. There's lots to talk about, unfortunately, possibly. In any case, I will look forward to seeing you very soon to discuss the last part of this series on giving and receiving feedback. We'll turn the table and look at how to make sure that within a performance conversation you are able to showcase your accomplishments without being too mousy about it or unduly arrogant. So I hope you'll feel like joining me for the last installment of my feedback series, and I look forward to seeing you very soon. Until then, take care and thanks for watching. Bye bye.